Hello there, Unlearner. Welcome to this episode of the UnLearners Podcast. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to be present to this conversation, whether you are listening or you are watching the conversation we're about to have now. And as you can see right from our screen and what you see in the background, we are currently shooting this from the UnLearning Experience Retreat 2024. And today's guest is someone who I am happy and so excited to have because she also happens to be one of our partners as part of the retreat. So firstly, just a huge thank you, but then also just to acknowledge you and the phenomenal work that you do, Thandekile. Thank you so much. So Thandekile, before I get too excited and not introduce you properly, so Thandekile Moloko is a financial advisor, but she doesn't just do that. I feel like the work that you do is so deep and so impactful. And we will really get into that as we have our conversation. But the title she chooses to use is really financial advisor.
The UnLearners. Learn, change, grow. Learn, change, grow. The UnLearners. The UnLearners. The UnLearners. Learn, change, grow.
Thandekile, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you for having me. I think this is a great initiative, and I think we're going to debunk a lot.
I think so.
Yeah.
And that's really the conversation I want us to focus in on today. We've even gathered some questions from our audience, from our retreat attendees, just specifically around unlearning those limiting beliefs around money. But here's where I want to start. I would like to start with just understanding what it looks like to know that you even have. And some may call them money blocks, because we go through life and we think, no, I'm okay. I earn well. I'm comfortable with what I have. I don't think I've got money blocks. I'm fine. Are there telltale signs that we can look out for and for someone to almost use as a checklist as they start this episode to go, ooh, maybe I do have these limiting beliefs. Let me listen in. Anything you can think of?
You know, unlimiting beliefs there's so many variables of them. There's so many variances of them. So from person to person, it's going to be different. A person could have an unlimited belief in terms of how they see money. Someone else could have a limiting belief in terms of how they relate to money in terms of their day-to-day. Someone could think that they can't actually create money. They can't make any money. And there's variations of it. So how you see it and how it would present itself will come out in different ways, right? Some people would see it in their general paycheck and how they handle money, right? Saying that, you know what, I've got a lot more month than I have actual money, right? That happens in some people. Versus there's some people that have limiting beliefs where they have so much money left over because they don't know what to do with it. They don't even save, they don't invest. They are literally hoarding this money because they've got limitations in terms of how they perceive money. So from person to person, there's going to be variances in how that comes about in the feeling. But there will be a sense in themselves, psychologically and even in their spirit, to say that I'm not comfortable with where I am with money. I'm feeling a little bit rigid. I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed when I make decisions in regards to money. It just doesn't feel fluid. You know, there feels like a sense of restriction.
Oh, that's a nice one. And I also like how you went into the idea of there may be a perceived abundance, and so you think that you don't have a limiting, and I said unlimiting. Maybe it's because I'm abundant, I don't know. And so you think because there's this perceived abundance, surely I'm fine. But maybe the abundance or the leftover or the surplus is driven by, I want to just make sure that I'm never poor again. Or I just want to make sure that I'm never without because when I was younger or whatever it is. So I think that is something so important to speak about, because otherwise you go through your relationship with money and you think that there isn't necessarily anything there to be addressed when there actually is. So I like that you channeled it all the way down to a feeling that there isn't that sense of ease when you exchange money or when you spend money or when money comes in. There's that whole process. Is that something you've seen with some of your clients? Would you say that there is more the limiting belief that's driven by I actually don't have, or the limiting belief of I'm hoarding because I'm afraid that I might get to a point where I don't have?
Yes, I hear you. So because I'm a financial planner, there's a lot of people, or the people that I generally deal with are the people that see that they have abundance. They see that there is money left over, and they see that they're not usually utilizing this money to their benefit, right? They're using it, to spend, to have a good time, but they're not seeing the ROI, if I could say it like that, of the money that they're actually creating. So those are the people that usually come to me because they want to see their money manifest into something else, something bigger than themselves, something that could be succeeded to other people in their families, and even be inheritance for people that they love. So those are usually the people that I deal with. Then there are others that do come to me and say, listen, I need your help as a financial coach. So there's a financial planning leg of things, and those are the people that have the abundance, and I refer to that as the disposable income. And then we have the people that say, listen, I want to do so much more. My heart wants to, but my finances and the rigidness in my finances does not allow for such. How do I get to the point of disposable income? Is it my mindset? Is it my money story? What exactly am I getting wrong? And how can I surpass this with your financial coaching assistance?
So would you say then that the work is almost 50% having a strategy that works, and then 50% mindset, unlearning those limiting beliefs? Or would you say it's more like an 80-20? What would you say that ratio is?
Oh, that's a deep question. And I will have to layer it. I think I need to speak about demographics. It's very important to understand the demographic that is asking for assistance. So there's a lot of people that are not prone to conversations about money, which means that the mindset is different. We are starting from ground up. We are starting to basically build up the foundation in terms of how we perceive money. How do we have positive affirmations in regards to money? How do we see that we can create abundance for ourselves? And because of that, we need to start with the mindset before we can even get to the disposable income, and then the strategy level of even multiplying what we currently have. So depending on the demographic, and I will say this, in most instances, I deal with professionals, right? And Black professionals. So you will realize with them a lot, there is still the mindset that is restrictive. So we still need to get into the psychology and the behavioral psychology of finances to say, why are you feeling the way you feel about money? Why do you have the restrictions in this regard?
So maybe let's get into that then. What have you found have been some of the driving factors, maybe even the predominant ones behind some of your clients going, maybe let's start with the mindset work. Let's start with some of the unlearning and the unraveling first. Is it, like you say, because there's a story there? And then usually what are some of those bigger stories that do then lead your clients to come to you?
Definitely. There's always a story behind it. And in most instances, that story comes from your childhood and the environment that you grew up in your childhood. And obviously that story is going to vary. It's going to be different from person to person because we all come from different types of childhoods, right? And that story really depicts the picture of how you perceive your money in the future. And then there's also what you see in terms of what you build up as you go through life. So there's certain things that we adopt, our spending habits, our overconsumption, social media, all of those things. And now we start adopting that, inclusive of what we learned in our environment in our minor years when we're still kids. Those things encapsulate how you perceive money, right? And that's what we work through at the beginning of it. So that generally, I don't want to say dictates, but it creates pretty much the foundation of what your financial mindset is. And that's where we start looking at those limitations and how to actually start redirecting it.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit triggering for me, to be really honest, when you said story, because it took me all the way back. And I'll never forget when I started doing some of my deep money work. That was so uncomfortable, but it took me all the way back to primary school, Thandekile. And I could just see in my head, I was one of those children that never used to carry money for the tuck shop. My mother would always make me bread with polony, and my little juice that used to leak in my bag. That was my story for a very long time. And so the children around me in the class some of them would, bring money to school. And I remember our teachers would always give us an opportunity in the morning to order sausage rolls.
Yes.
And the sausage rolls would come at break time in this container. And I still remember the shape of the container, the color of the container, just because that memory is so deeply seated. And then they would pass this container around, and I could always smell the sausage rolls. And in my head, it used to say, Zanele, you're not one of those children. And then eventually it became, you're not one of those people. You don't have that. You are in this position. And I carried that. And when I started to do some of my deeper seated work, I realized very much like what you were saying, and I love your process, that it's understanding the limiting beliefs first, then going, how do we sort of think about, you mentioned that the strategy was last. There was something in between, and I'm trying to just remember what the name is really quickly.
Yes, no, so I was referring to the disposable income.
Yes, and I love that. So before we even get to the strategy, do you have disposable income that we can then use to grow your wealth? So that for me was extremely powerful, and I love that you shared it and you went into it, because it triggered me, but it also helped me to understand that so many people are sitting there with stories. And so maybe the question I want to lean into now is, what do they do? What do we do if we don't come from an environment where we've been able to easily have the money conversation? And let's say maybe it's just now with our kids as we want to start introducing it. Maybe it's with a partner who's a lot more comfortable having that conversation, or it's just at work, maybe they're having a conversation about money and I'm like, I'm going to keep quiet because I'm not quite ready. Where do we start if we've been socialized not to have the conversation?
Absolutely. And, the honest answer is to firstly be honest with yourself. I think a lot of us have the ostrich effect, where we want to bury our heads in the sand and we literally want to say, I don't want to deal with this. You need to take out the scab and the wound to say that these are my limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't want to do that. And then we redirect our energy into things that are not beneficial to us. The next thing that I'd say is that I really find it beneficial that as a society, you need to have a network of people around you that are going to be of your benefit. Guys, have experts around you that care about you, that understand your narrative, that understand your pain points, that are going to assist you through your journey. Because Gaston, and I'm gonna direct translate it. You can't heal yourself. You need others to assist you to heal yourself. So in as much as you've got the capacity to change, but there's some people that can have the inner capacity to look at you and say, these are some of the things that you're perhaps not tapping into. And these are the things that we need to start airing out so we can have the conversation about it. So from my perspective, like you would have a doctor if you're not feeling well, like you would have an attorney when you've got legal issues, get a financial coach, get a life coach, get a financial planner that have expertise in these things, because they work through it on a day-to-day basis and they understand your problem. They understand it, but also you need someone that is going to carry it with a little bit of empathy, right?
Definitely.
And carry you with that empathy. But I think you need to have people around you that will assist you along that journey.
I think that's really valuable. One of the other questions that came up from our retreat attendees was around being a people pleaser who almost you find every single almost month when you go back to your expenditures for the month, you find that you've been very generous, but not necessarily very generous because it's come from a place where you've gone, oh, I want to give to everyone because I'm so abundant, but it's I'm responding or reacting to the requests that are coming from my external world. How would you say one manages the process of reacting and responding when it comes to how they manage their finances?
Absolutely. I refer to that as overcompensation. So there's a reason why you're a people pleaser. There's a psychological association with that. There's a feeling that you want to attain with pleasing people. And you need to first delve into that one in terms of what exactly are you trying to receive from this. Fine. Once you've done that, you need to sit down and before you make a decision, take time. Don't impulsively say yes to everything. Give yourself time to make a decision. And from the decisions that you make, you need to realize, are you going to feel at ease with the decision that you made? I believe that money is energy. And if you are going to take out money and not feel good about the decision you made, don't do it. Don't do it. And I really believe that you need to take the time to say that before I actually make this decision, I'm actually going to take the time off. I'm also going to make sure that I actually want to make this decision in itself, and that this decision is not going to take away from myself. It's not going to take away from who I am and what I'm trying to do, and even my financial sustainability and my financial well-being. Yeah.
I really like that you mentioned that, because it goes right back to where we started with the emotional triggers around why we buy. And it's funny because the data now is staggering about how most of our buying decisions, whether it's on Temu, it's on Shein, it's on wherever we buy, are driven by our emotions predominantly, and not necessarily any calculated, intentional, strategic, holistic growth types of decisions or drivers of decisions.
Yes.
And that's extremely profound. Is that something you've also seen? Is that a trend you're also noticing as you work with people?
Absolutely. I think one of the exercises that we do, especially when a client comes in, is that I ask you to please give me a write-up of what your budget needs to look like. So show me what your expenses are supposed to look like. Once you've done that, I also want you to give me your bank statements. That is going to show me what you perceive as your values and what you stand for and what you're actually doing, right? And we're then going to see the psychological impact that you have in your life that are making you make the decisions that you make. And the reason why we do that is because I don't want to create a financial plan for you and a strategy for you that you're not going to be able to action.
Sure.
We need to be able to action this. And that's why we need to understand the deep-seated things inside of you that are not allowing you to make the right decisions for yourself. So that when we do the action plan, when we do the strategy, we can consistently go with it.
That is profound.
Yeah.
And funny enough, Thandekile, very much to what you're saying in that particular episode, and I want to encourage our unlearners to go back to that episode where we speak about expenses and spending and your spending habits and unlearning almost this culture of constant consumerism. But one of the ideas we speak about is, don't tell me what your priorities are. Show me your bank statement, because your actions at the end of the day is how I will know what you truly prioritize. Because if you're throwing money at something, it's a priority for you. Not everyone just sort of throws money at anything. It's almost like someone showing you where they spend their time. That's also something okay, this person really values this, because if you look at where they are most of the time, they're sitting at work until 11 p.m. every day. So all of those types of things I think are so telling. And I love that you do that with your clients, because it means you don't take the story they tell you, right? You take the real-time data and insights that come from those resources.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have to.
Yeah, right. Otherwise.
Yeah, no. I have to. Numbers don't lie.
At all. And I love that you start there, because it means now once we've established that, we can then move forward to say, okay, now what?
Yeah.
What do we then do? Especially if and this is where we'll end off with this conversation, but I want it to be as practical as possible so that our unlearners can go, okay, what do I do now? Because we've got almost a combination with our unlearners, because most of our network is professionals, people who do earn fairly well, who are consistent in their earning, but there are possibly things that are sitting under the various layers, right? So I want to talk about what we do then. Are there some key things that we almost want to start off with under those three various categories? The mindset, and then the other category, which was the income, the income that we can then use to invest and save. And then the very last one was then the actual growth of what we have already. Anything that we can start off with there that is a kind of action or activity that you can go, okay, even if where you are right now, you're still going to have a conversation with SIMWEALTH about how we can support you, but here's what you can do between now and when you call us to support you.
Sure. For the first one, in terms of the mindset and the limiting beliefs, right? I call this the day where you actually take some rest. And this is the day where you have a Saturday or a Sunday, and this is the day you be honest with yourself. This is where you remove all the variables of, I've got responsibilities, whether you're married, you've got a child, your work obligations, your family obligations, all your obligations, just put them aside and actually be honest with yourself of, where am I standing financially and why am I standing here? What are the decisions that I've made? I also want you to take stock of your finances in terms of, Where exactly have you started making decisions for yourself that are not propelling you forward?
Yeah.
Right? Come to me with that, then we'll have the conversation. The next step is then to create the disposable income. Some people, some professionals already have the disposable income. You may have to try and find it somewhere,
Yeah.
but it's definitely there. And then we'll
Mhm.
definitely do the finances to see exactly where the disposable income is. Once we've done that, we need to create a financial plan. And I call this the roadmap.
Mhm.
This is a roadmap that is going to allow us to say, this is what we're going to do to attract financial sustainability and to actually create financial sustainability. There's certain steps that we want to put in place. You need to have a rainy day fund. I know a lot of people don't want to have a rainy day fund.
Yeah.
We need to have that. You need to make sure that your personal financial management is on lock. You need to make sure that your day-to-day is managed appropriately. You're not using money recklessly because of the emotional aspect that you're in. All right. Then we want to make sure that you're taking care of your retirement planning. I know a lot of professionals think that their pension funds are enough, or whatever minimal amount that they're putting in their pension funds is enough. And in some, or in actual fact, in most instances,
Yeah.
that's not the case. Then we have to look at your retirement planning. We need to look at your goal-orientated strategies. A lot of people use debt to achieve their financial goals. And we need to now do the reverse. We need to know what your financial goals are. Start making sure that we come up with a strategy so you save and you invest towards those goals. So we limit the amount of debt that we associate with our financial goals, because debt it's a snowball effect. You'll always feel like, okay, I've got debt, I can always use it. And sometimes we feel it's our own money, and in actual fact, it's not. And we try and limit that by making sure that our goal-oriented strategies are taken care of. And that's it. People have different types of goals that they want to achieve in their lifetime. And then we look at your estate planning in terms of what you're trying to achieve for yourself and for your family. That is going to round up what you need in your life. It's going to create the bigger picture of what your finances are supposed to look like. And then we can start speaking about investment portfolios and all the things people really come to me for.
Oh, all the really exciting
All the really
things,
exciting
right,
things
that actually
people come
grow our wealth and get us to a place where there is that comfort to go right back to where we started. That there is that ease when you think about your money.
Yeah.
There is that comfort when you think about it.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned the idea of doing some kind of a check-in around your money. And I am not even lying, Thandekile. I want to just completely support that, because when I started doing a monthly check of my money, I would look at my bank statements. I would go through every single place where I would look at my RA and what I've accumulated, look at my bond and what's happening there. And I would track what I've paid for each and every month and what I haven't and everything else. It's almost like magic, but everything starts to shift, and what's coming in, and just knowing, understanding, and being able to look at your money, right? And lean into it, I think, is a huge one. I want to close off with this question, because we might have individuals that are going, okay, I get it. And usually with the conversation we're having now, it's, oh, okay, cool. Tomorrow, it's going to happen. I'm going to start. I'm going to just make sure I have a spreadsheet, all the things. Talk to me about what happens if not. Talk to me about what you might have seen with clients where you go, ooh, if they had, then this would have been avoided. Anything that you would see that will really help us go, oh, wow, this is a matter of urgency.
It's so unfortunate that money is not a tangible, or financial goals are not a tangible thing. You have to see the reality of it actually come into effect. For you to see the detriment of it. And that's why a lot of us don't see the need of us doing or making certain financial decisions for ourselves, because we don't see it in the current terms, the effect that it's going to have for our future. I mean, for instance, I'll take into consideration one that is spoken about a lot, but retirement and emergencies. I can't tell you how many times in COVID-19 in itself, people got retrenched. People had to have pay cuts, and they literally had not even R1 in savings or investments readily available. They then had to opt for their retirement benefits to allow them to sustain themselves, right? If they were getting retrenched, which also has a snowball effect, because that retirement benefit, you're now starting from ground zero. You're probably 35 or 40 years old. And that means that you need to contribute far more than you can anticipate to actually reach your retirement goal when you're at age 65. Now you're taking out your day-to-day money that you're going to need to sustain you and your family, right? Which means that you're not going to have enough money to pay the school fees, your bond, your children's leisure, your car repayments, all the things that you pay for in your day-to-day expenses. And things happen in life. Inflation kicks in, interest rates go up, and now you find yourself in a rut. You now start paying Peter or you start stealing from Peter to pay Paul, right? And that's where you constantly get into a cycle of debt, right? Which means that even psychologically, you're overwhelmed. You're not in a good space. So you'll see it in a lot of people, a lot of middle-class professionals that are saying that I am making a lot of money, but I don't see where my money is going. I have no liquidity. I have no fluidity in my money. My money, in as much as it comes in, it goes out as quickly as it comes in. So that is the reality. And now we want to remove it or shy away from it, or slowly and gradually make it something that is not a reality in your life.
I really like that, because it shows that cycle, right?
Yes.
And how even though you get to the disposable income, you get to the saving and investment, you might find yourself going, oh, but it's still not working. Then it means you just need to sort of go back and do work on one of those different parts. And sometimes it is that unlearning those limiting beliefs that you need to just go back to and go, maybe there's still something leaking here that I need to just work on. And understand that it's constant, right? It's constant work. Because regardless of where you are, and I want to call them levels, but I also don't, regardless of where you are in terms of how comfortable you are with your money or how much you earn, very much like you say with professionals that earn well, you are still somehow dealing with certain money blocks that are very subjective or specific to that area. Because sometimes you get to a place where you're earning really, really well, you've got lots of disposable income, but you've got a different set of money blocks there as well.
Absolutely. And the multiplying of that money. I always say that financial limitations is not directed only to people that don't have money. You can have a lot of money and still have financial limitations. You can have the financial limitation, you don't know how to multiply what you have. That's a financial limitation. It's a financial block, right? And when it comes to financial limitations, it doesn't matter where you are. It's that cycle that you referred to. So once you've sorted out this one and you've navigated it and you're doing good in this regard, you may have to now navigate another facet of it, another limiting belief, but you need to get out of it as well. Limiting beliefs happen, right? It's normal, it happens, but it's not optimal. It's not something that is going to get you where you want to be. And that's why you consistently need to work towards them.
And reframe some of those stories, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And wonderful. We have to end off our conversation, sadly. This was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much, Thandekile, for your time, for just allowing SIMWEALTH to be a partner of the UnLearning Experience Retreat, but also for the work that you do. I don't think you'll ever really understand what you do, because when you support one person, it snowballs to their children and you create a new generational story. The people can say, oh yeah, Grandma Zanele, I'm going to use myself here. Grandma Zanele did this and she, consulted with SIMWEALTH and she worked with them. And as a result now, I'm going away to this country for 6 months because everything's all sorted. So just that beautiful impact that you're creating and really helping an entire generation or generations to unlearn. I think that's really big work.
Thank you. Thank you. Biggest compliment. Thank you very much.
I honor you. Really, really amazing. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, UnLearners, for taking the time to watch or listen to this episode of the UnLearners Podcast. And my guest today was none other than Thandekile Moloko of SIMWEALTH. Definitely go over and check them out and see how they can support you on your journey to creating wealth, to unlearning some of those limiting beliefs around your money, your finances, and your wealth. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been myself, Zanele Njapa, the Unlearning Lady, saying bye for now.
The UnLearners. learn,